Hello and welcome to today's video where I will teach you how to use threads in Android Studio. This is going to be the easy way as always, and it's going to be a series of 4 videos. This will be only the part 1 when I'll be talking about blocking the user interface. Basically, I'll teach you what happens if you don't use threads and what's the reason for using them, and just to show you a bit of worst case scenario and then a good case scenario and how to do it. So as I was telling you, this is going to be a series of 4 videos. The first one, it's about blocking the user interface. So actually why we need threads and what happens if we don't use them. Then the second video will be about background threads implemented with Runnable. So how to fix the problem of blocking the UI and how to go around it and how to properly use a thread. Then I'll show you how to update the user interface from a background thread. And this is going to be very useful for you because whenever you have some information, some task or some activity happening in the background and you want to show the progress in the foreground in the user interface, this is going to be the way to do it. And in the last video, I'll talk about async task, which is deprecated, and I'll show you alternative async task. So this is going to be the series of 4 videos. We'll start easy with this one, and then stay tuned, you'll see the others. So to begin with, this video will show you this app. So we'll build this app. It's going to be very simple with 3 buttons and a text view. And this button will be used to click on it and increment the counters. So you can see the user interface is active, it's doing something, it's responding. And then we can start a thread and see what happens. We can stop one, but this will be implemented step by step in the further videos. Okay, so let's go to Android Studio and see the code and see how it's done. You will start by opening Android Studio, and then you will create a new project. As always, it's going to be a phone and tablet project, and you will choose empty activity. Next, you can choose the name, package name, save location, minimum SDK, as long as you keep the Java programming language selected, and then you press finish. Once your project is loaded completely, and you have this project folder in the left side, and you have the 2 open files, the activity main XML and the main activity Java. You'll start by taking care of the user interface. And for this, I will just go a bit fast. If you need help to work with your user interface and to know how to build it, then you can check any of my previous videos. For now, I'll just go fast. I'll create the user interface, and then I'll explain shortly what I've done. Okay, so what I've done until this point, I've put these 3 buttons in the user interface, and the first button is used to click, so we can test the user interface. Every time we click on this button, there will be a variable here incremented and displayed. And then you have the start and the stop thread buttons, where when we press either of the buttons, the appropriate action will be performed. For each button, I've declared a onClick method, and you can see it's highlighted in red because I didn't go in the main activity file to write that method. So for now, it is red. Same for the start button. You see the start thread is red, and for the stop button is the same. But we will implement these methods shortly. So for now, I just place the buttons. I changed the text. I've changed the placement. I've set the constraints because this is a constraint layout, and I put this. I repurposed this text view that was the hello world one, and now it will be used to display the status of the thread when we will do that part. However, in this first video, we're just going to test the user interface. Okay, so going in the main activity, let's implement the methods for these buttons, for the 3 buttons. I will just write the first one, and then I will explain it to you. Okay, so until this point, what we've done, we just implemented this method, the test user interface, and this is a very simple method. You only have a variable that is increased, so incremented every time this method is executed, and we have this button, which is a view, and this will change its text to this click to test user interface, and we increment this part over here. Now, there is some red text and this red button, and I left it like so, just in case some of you need a bit extra explanations, so I can show you. When you use a button or a view or other elements that require a class to be imported, then it will be like this with red. So if you hold your mouse over it and it will say import class, you can just do this. And then you will say the Android widget button class has been imported, and now the button isn't highlighted in red anymore. So now it's okay. Same goes for the methods it implements. Okay, and for this variable, this says click count, and this is click count. And let me just change it here as well to click count. All right, so this part over here will just take care of this part where you click the button and the counter is incremented. So every time you do this, you will check that the user interface is not blocked, that you can interact with it. Now let's put some code over here so we can simulate this thread being busy working with something, performing a task, doing something. Now for this, I will just write the method and then I will explain what it does. Okay, so this is the start button, and I will get to it in a second. What you need to observe is that we only have this simple for structure that will count until 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, until 10, and every time, for every iteration, it will freeze or it will sleep the thread by 1000 milliseconds, which obviously is equal to 1 second. You can see this sleep is being underlined with red, so if you click on it and you just have a look what the error says, to surround it with a try catch. So now you have something like this. So I would recommend going for this variant. And let me just add something else, because we want to see what the application is actually doing while it's counting. So for this, we need to have a log. And for this log, let's just go and say, we'll just say log and then create a tag. All right, this will be main activity. Let's just go like so. And then here inside the for, we'll go again log and we'll give it, let's say, an information, an info log I. Okay, and this will be plus I. This way we can check in the log and see here in the log cat, and then you can see what the program is doing, what the application is doing every step of the way. Right, and the last thing before we can try the application, we'll just implement the stop thread method. This is going to be very simple, just stop thread. We'll do it a bit later. With this being done, we can just save everything, and then let's have a look to see how the application is performing. So the application has been loaded, and we can test it now. So every time I press this button, the counter should increment. All right, and if I press the start thread, this is when we should have the background counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Now, if you look over here, you see the counting in progress. Okay, so let me just minimize this a little bit. So as you can see, I can press and the user interface is working, it's counting, but if I press the start thread and I'm trying now to count, as you can see, nothing happens. So the user interface has frozen. And if I insist, it will throw an exception, as you can see, and the application is not responding. Okay, so what we can do about this? The obvious problem with this application is that if you're looking here in the code, when we freeze the thread here, or when we sleep the thread, we actually sleep the main thread or the user interface thread. And this is why the application throws the exception or the error. And this is why the application freezes, because by default, the thread that you are putting to sleep is the main thread. Now, it's not enough for us to write the name of the method saying start thread. We actually need to implement the proper code to start a thread. And this is what I'll show you in the next example. So taking step by step, now baby steps, we started with this app. Let me just minimize the emulator. Okay, I can minimize this as well. So starting with this very simple app, I've just showed you what happens when you're trying to interact with the user interface while the main thread is frozen or is sleeping. And you see that the application crashes. Now the next logical step is for me to show you how to move your task to a different thread, separate thread, so you can still use the interface and the task would still be performed in the background in parallel. So let me just save this and I'll open a new project and a new video and I'll show you how it's done. So stay tuned and watch part 2 of this video.